The poor are getting richer faster. The first mistake a lot of people make is thinking in terms of wages. To run this exercise, and this is going to be a live stream where I talk for 10 to 15 minutes, giving you time to get your questions into the comments section. And then my goal tonight is to answer all the questions that come in. Tuesdays at 4 o'clock, like today, I do live streams that generally last as long as the questions do. I'm trying to make some shorter term, 15-minute videos where I answer a couple of questions for the people who will never click on a 2-hour video in their life. I see you. But on Tuesdays, I am doing these longer videos. And then I'm going to ask this a couple times tonight because I'm finding out people come in cycles throughout the video. For the members channel, a couple of people have suggested not doing it after the lives on Tuesdays because sometimes they go long or sometimes it's our meetup night or something like that. So I'm going to be taking a poll on what night of the week or weekend would work best for membership only live streams. I may have some surprise guests that pop in tonight too. So the rich are getting richer. We have had 2 years of the Fed basically printing almost 80% of our currency in the last couple of years, which means that if you understand how money works, generally the government prints money, puts it out in, poor people spend money on things that cycle the money up to the rich. But a lot of us, myself included, grow up most of our lives hearing that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, like there's this ever-widening divide. And there is, if we include the top 1%. So in this theory, we're going to eliminate Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, like the ones that just completely skew the numbers. But to be fair, then we're also going to remove the people who are in survival mode, who are homeless, have no income, don't qualify for any social programs. Like just take out the extremes and think of the people making $20,000 to $50,000 a year, and the people making $100,000 to $300,000 a year, kind of like those two groups. It's kind of hard to talk about a middle class when the middle class is being destroyed almost on a daily basis. But let's think on just the two incomes. Let's give an example of wages. In the last couple of years, people have said that we're seeing somewhere between 5 and 7% wage increases. And if you're closer to my age, we expect longevity to be rewarded. We grew up in an era where our parents had pensions and we thought, I'm going to work for 20 or 30 years, get a military retirement, a law enforcement retirement, hit pension with my union. And the longer I'm at a company, the more reward I'm going to get. Well, what we found in the last 10 to 15 years is that the people who change jobs every 2 to 3 years end up making significantly more than the people who stay at a job long term. And with pensions going away, there isn't really that reward to stay at one company for decades. So the increase of 5 to 7% is for the people staying in one company, possibly climbing a ladder, but sometimes it's cost of living increases versus the people who are changing jobs or increasing their income by reducing the cost of where they live. With remote working, you don't have to live in a city where you're paying $3,000 or $4,000 for a crappy little apartment. You can move out to a rural area, keep the same wage with your remote job, but significantly reduce your expenses. So that ability to save might change without getting a wage increase. But let's take an example of, and I'm going to do 2 examples of how the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So, and that poor that are getting poorer is the ones who aren't taking advantage of something that exists now that hasn't in the past, or at least in my past. The example I'm going to use is, let's say you have an employee making $30,000 and you have the boss, the manager, the plant manager, the supervisor, the whatever, making $100,000 at the same company. And that company realizes that, like the company that I was working at in the last couple of years, last 13 years before I retired, we did like a 5%, 5%, 10% raise. So it was basically a 20% increase in wages over the period of a year. We did it for staff, not management, but I'm going to do it in an example where it would affect all staff. So if you work at a company and they do a 20% wage increase without having to leave companies because they realize they didn't want to retain people. So this is very hypothetical because 20% is very significant. But this is where most people's minds stop thinking. They think to this point, they think up to the point where wages. Money is, I sell my life 1 hour at a time to make income, and they interact with their coworkers the most, and they work with their bosses. So this is generally how most people think of money. And then the second thing I want to cover after this is mindset shift and how to get there. So a 20% increase when you make $30,000, $6,000 increase every year. So it's a significant, it's 20% of what you were making last year. So you're now making $36,000. Your boss, who was making $100,000, a little over 3 times what you were making. I'm not talking a CEO at a company that makes 285 times what the average employee makes, just 3 times to be the boss running everything. A 20% increase is $20,000. So most employees look at their wage and they go, okay, we got the same increase, right? We have the same 20% increase impacting both of us. I'm getting $6,000 more. Boss getting $20,000 more. Technically, our workload from last year to this year hasn't changed too much, but this is how we see the rich, the manager, making more than us, even though the percentage change was the same. A lot of people's thinking stops there. So that's the first example. Now here's the mindset shift. The negative to this is thinking in terms of selling your life 1 hour at a time, having one source of income. So something that exists now that hasn't for most of my life until the last decade and a half is YouTube University. Access to information, the knowledge from people that in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you had to buy someone's autobiography and hope it wasn't full of BS and think maybe this will work. And you couldn't interact with the author. You couldn't ask questions. Well, now you have channels like this that exist and thousands of others where people share, this is how we reached financial freedom. This is some of it's scare videos because it gets more views on the crash is coming and all of the reasons why you should never buy real estate or invest in stocks, or all of the other things where people use fear to stop you from progressing because fear sells. I want you to start thinking, instead of how can I sell my life 1 hour at a time and make more money? Because some people would say, well, then you just try to be the boss. And the boss got a $20,000 raise. You only got a $6,000 raise. So why aren't you the boss? Limited thinking. I was working as a CDL instructor after getting laid off from a police department in 2008 because of the recession. And I started out making not a lot of money. It was like $17 an hour. I climbed the ladder. I started making more money. And in my last couple of years, I had a 6-figure salary. So I did work my way into being a boss. What I made in money last year, what I made from work was significantly less than what I made because I was thinking differently. I started almost 10 years ago buying cash flowing rentals, assets that produce income. So there are several ways to produce income. Some people start and grow a side hustle, like another side business, and then they grow up to the point where it is a real business, and you work in it full time, and then you work on the business instead of in the business, and you grow it to the point where somebody else runs the day-to-day. That's the goal for financial freedom with the business. You can invest in stocks and grow a dividend stock portfolio that produces income, or grow it large enough to where you have the 25%, 25 times your expenses, so you can live on 4%, based on the 4% rule, to have cash flow coming in that you don't have to sell your life for 1 hour at a time. Or I invested in real estate. Over a period of 10 years, where almost every year there was a reason, somebody was telling me, don't buy real estate. We have a huge crash coming. Prices are above where they were in 2008, and you saw what happened there. We have a silver tsunami coming where all these baby boomers are going to retire. We have interest rates in 2018 going above 6%. There's no way you can buy real estate. So I kept buying real estate that cash flowed. And it was hard some years. Like this year, it's not easy to find a great deal. And there are some strategies to do that we're trying to share on channels like mine, and One Rental at a Time, and Lumberjack Landlord's channel, and Millennial Mike's channel, trying to get the information out there that there are people still buying properties. I made 3 offers this week. I might have another one going out tonight. Doesn't mean the deals are easy to find. Doesn't mean they're all over the place, but there are still people investing successfully today in this current market. Just like all the years where everybody was telling me, don't buy real estate. So here is my transparent numbers as to how the poor are getting richer faster than ever. Because yes, wealthy people are getting more wealthy. But to go from making $17 an hour 10 years ago to having a six-figure income now without having to go to work isn't something that I think that would have happened if we didn't have access to podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube University, educating ourselves to the strategies that other people have used successfully, and then taking the parts of that work for us and putting it to work in our own plan. Don't sue me. I'm going to share transparent numbers. I totally understand how some of the larger investors like Zuber or Lumberjack Landlord don't share the numbers because we want it to be attainable. And if somebody said, oh, you can make millions of dollars a year, how do you take the first step to that, right? I'm still luckily small enough to where I can share the numbers and I still think it's attainable. I had a six-figure income last year from work. I retired this year. So this year, I don't think it will hit six-figure. I retired in July, so probably not. But I made over $500,000 outside of work. So what I'm going to talk about is a mind shift. I want you to stop thinking in salary, income, into net worth. This is where real wealth is built. And while we don't invest for things like appreciation, it does happen. It doesn't happen if you don't own assets. Your zero asset portfolio is not going to double in value. It can go down, but here's an example of a year where it didn't. So cash flow, rental property with 16 units last year was $128,000. That was the profit after all of the expenses, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, setting aside money for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, about $38,000 for that. Went into an account, for future repairs, and actually went into the investing account because the reserve was full. So I have videos that cover all of those things, like how much to keep in reserves, how to grow your investing funds on my channel here. So $128,000 coming in profit, setting aside money for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy. And every month, my tenants paid part of the mortgage off. This is called principal pay down. So technically, I'm paying the mortgages, but the rent comes in, and the rent is what pays that. So like I said, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is paid for out of rent, and then the profit comes after that. About $3,000 a month, and it grows slightly every month because of amortization schedules, means that about $36,000, almost the same amount that I set aside for repairs and maintenance and vacancy, grew in my net worth like a savings account that I don't have to actively add money to. It just grows every month. Then this thing appreciation happened. And like I said, if you have $0 in assets, if you have zero ownership in anything, and appreciation happens, which is caused by inflation, the more dollars it takes to buy something, the more value your asset will have. Then add supply chain issues, supply and demand imbalances, and we have the appreciation that we had. My portfolio across the board, so just on the rental properties, and I only own 16 rental units on 7 properties, the value changed over $600,000 last year, going up. Add to that the $36,000 in pay down, the $36,000 set aside for repairs, the $128,000 in profit. These are all astronomical numbers that I couldn't comprehend 10 years ago or think that were possible. None of that income that I just rattled off had anything to do with me working. I also worked. I also made money. I also invested. I also saved. I've got a lump of money to put into the next property now. So are the rich getting richer? Yes. If you look at me from 2021 to 2022, significant change in net worth without having to do a lot myself. Like I bought 1 rental property in 2021 and then I self-managed all 16. So it's not like I'm doing 10 deals a month or 10 deals a year or even 2 deals a year most years. I call myself the lazy investor, and I try to share strategies that I think the person that is working, that has a family, that is raising kids, can do on the side and develop an income like that. So if we go back a few years, I think I qualify as part of the equation that says, yes, the rich are getting richer, but the poor are getting richer faster than ever. If somebody went to me in 2009 after getting laid off from the police department, starting a job, finding out about a bunch of bad debt I didn't know about that existed until the divorce, and then making $17 an hour as a parent with 3 kids. I would have needed a lot of today's sponsor for the video, which is Alien Vodka, who actually doesn't sponsor the video. They just make it possible. If they told me that you were going to make over $500,000 without doing anything in 10 years, I would have thought they were drinking today's sponsor. Everyone watching this video can do what I did. You can find an asset class that you can invest in that lets you, I want you to think of this sentence, and I'm going to be making a video for this, but not today. You can buy money. You can literally use money to acquire more money. It might not be with rentals the way I did it. It might not be in the asset class that I did. It might not be with buy and hold. It might not be with long-term tenants. It might not be all kinds of parts of the strategies that I've used, but it will be using the 3-step process that almost everyone should be familiar with. Save, and save has a couple components. Increase your income. That might be from working overtime, changing companies, developing a side hustle. Reduce your income to save the difference. Saving is not just saving what you have. It's trying to make more, trying to spend less so you can save. Then you want to invest the difference. You want to save and then invest. Then continue to invest. The money that the assets produce continues to be invested until you're well past this thing we call the income snowball. When your assets start producing more money than it costs you to live, you are then financially free. To get to that point, it takes discipline to keep saving, because as you start making more money, you need to reduce your expenses. It doesn't mean the nicer car, the big vacation, the more expensive thing that you can spend the money on. You need to figure out a way to put that money to work so that when you invest it, you continue to snowball, because a lot of people talk about compound interest, and a lot of people are thinking you're talking about all of the years that money can be in stocks. You can compound your incomes. As your money from your job goes up and your side hustles go up and your cash flowing assets produce money, all of that compounds into increasing how much you invest. Then you're going to have this problem, and I'm about to wrap up with the intro portion, which, hey, I'm only at 17 minutes. That's exactly how long my timer lasts. Here's the problem that happens after that. You have to learn how to spend money. Like, that sounds ridiculous, but it's not easy. I'm working on it. I'll get there. So let me get to the howdies. Brock, howdy. Good evening. How do you set the move-in date for a tenant, and what would you do if the tenant needed to push the date back? Is that one of the factors you consider when picking the best applicant? Okay, that's a great question, and I think I should probably include that in the video. I'm going to cover the topic of, you just closed on a rental. What do? What's next? This also happens with tenant turnover, so that wouldn't really apply to that. I'll figure out a way to get it in there. So as soon as the rental is available, every day that passes, you're losing usually somewhere between $60 and $80 a day on the types of properties I invest in, where it's probably $300,000 to $500,000 for the property. So based on your mortgage, you're losing that much money every day to expenses, and you're not profiting how much you could every day based on what your yield and cash flow are. So speed is important. You took probably a while to get the previous tenants out, or to make it rent ready, to get your rehabs done, to even if it's just something simple like paint or flooring or cleaning or whatever. That amount of time you control as much as you can. You're going to have scheduling issues as people are more busy if you're not doing this all yourself. Once it's available, I generally like to list it as soon as it's available. I don't like to, when I hear agents say, if you're going to sell a property, you want to list it on a Thursday. If you're going to list a rental, you want to do it in the summer, not the winter. Like I've listed properties in December, and I've listed properties in July, and I've had the same amount of success. Maybe if you're in Siberia, like Matt the lumberjack landlord, in the middle of nowhere where it's freezing, not middle of nowhere, in the middle of an area where it's freezing 5 months out of the year, and you can actually die if you get locked outside. It might be harder to rent a unit in the winter. So maybe you can structure your leases to try to end them in the summer. So if somebody does move in the winter, give them a 6-month lease or an 18-month lease. Put it to you in the summer. I don't consider that here in Washington, because generally the weather's not trying to kill us. Just depress us, then we kill ourselves. But that was dark. I need a drink. That was quick. Usually it's an hour. I need some water. So if you make it available, you don't have to say it's available on a first. We think in months because that's when rent is due. I have some friends who prefer to have some rent due on the 1st, some due on the 20th, some due on the 15th, whatever date they're picking, so that it spreads out when their income comes in. That's not how I do it, but they prefer it that way. When the application comes in, you are screening. It's a two-way screen. They're trying to find out if it's actually what they want. That's why they probably want to come to it for a tour. So when you have the property listed, I don't generally set up tours unless somebody fills out an application. So they've spent the money on the platform. Last time I used Hemline. Before that, I was using apartments.com. So you can use Zillow or some other, whatever platform you're using. If they've paid the money for the application, I'll generally set up a screening because they're probably, a viewing, they're probably going to show up. If somebody asks for a viewing, but they don't fill out an application, I will do a form of an open house. I will, email everybody who's expressed interest and say, hey, on this day, in this 4-hour window, or 2-hour window, or whatever's available for you, this is when somebody will be there for you to come and look inside. It can be you, it can be your handyman, it can be whoever. You can hire an agent. Hemline actually has the 3rd tier of their business. You can actually hire leasing agents to go out. I would avoid doing that unless they're signing a lease. So that's how I handle the screenings. If somebody has committed and said, okay, I want to move in, and then they say, I want to push off, you need to look at how many days they're pushing off, because every day that you've delayed to get it rent ready and then you found somebody, you're losing money to expenses every day, and you're losing the money that you could profit every day. So if they push it back, are you willing to lose that amount of money to get this tenant? Is their credit score high enough? Is their income high enough? Is their background the type you're looking for? Like all the things that you can legally use to choose between tenants. If they're asking for too far of a pushback, you can say, look, I can hold a place for you, but first, so if they're pushing it back far enough to where you're comfortable with it, get the deposit beforehand. I've not done I require the deposit and the rent immediately so that you can move on that day. I just want the deposit. And then you can actually put it in your communication that, if you then don't follow through, I'm keeping half the deposit, or I'm keeping all of the deposit, that this is a commitment to rent the place. Know your local laws. Sometimes this isn't going to stand up in court and you might lose the money and you might have to give the money back, but that's the way I communicate so that they at least think that's what's going to happen. And you can say, let's meet and sign the lease. If you meet and sign the lease to commit to that, so you're going to take it off the platform so it's not available for other people to see, then you're definitely going to want at least the deposit. That's how I do that. If they want to push it back too far, you can say, I'm sorry, you are qualified, but I am not willing to push it back to that date. You can rent it sooner and move in on that date, because I don't care when you move in. And if you can't do that because of whatever your situation is, I'm probably going to have to go with another applicant. This works currently for the last 10 years in my market, because when I listed a property, and I've had 4 tenant turnovers, and I think I've listed probably 9 times. So this is not my area of expertise, but I have some experience with it, because I have bought some properties that did have empty units. So it's not always my preference of having a tenant in place. That's my goal, is to buy an occupied property. So that's what I would do. I would look at, can I delay that long? Are they willing to rent sooner? And the reason it works in my area, as my memory kicks in, is because I put up an advertisement and I'll have 30 plus applicants within a day or two to choose from. So I hope that helps. Mike Jewell, howdy. Welcome to Someday. I appreciate you joining that. So that's something I need to kind of cover is the memberships. I'm going to talk about this a couple of times tonight. So if you stay through the whole thing, I'm sorry, you're going to hear this a few times, but I want to pick a night of the week or weekend that works for members to have a private live stream session where we do it kind of like Michael Zuber does his deal deep dives, or not deal deep dives, his deep delves, where there is a Zoom you can join so we can interact, or you're on YouTube watching that Zoom in case you don't want to be a part of the Zoom and still participate. So Lizette, howdy. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Let me look through here and see if I can find a question. Okay, because I've messed up a couple of times where I didn't see where the question went when there was there we go. I pawned my 3-month-old on my grandparents so I can attend the live stream this week for some real estate therapy. Cheers. with the sponsor of tonight's video. Thank you. I appreciate that. Generally, there's not much cussing, so it's okay to have kids in the background on my videos. And even if I do the edited videos, I usually try to bleep it out. But I wouldn't torture your kids and force them to watch anything that's on this channel till they're older, 15 maybe. Lauren, howdy, from Tacoma. Dividend Dave, howdy, how goes it? REI Stoners, howdy. Good evening, Dion. As rates go up, I'm running my numbers as if the seller was buying my rate down 2 to 3% instead of asking a lower offer price. What do you think about this strategy? I would look at that strategy and wonder, is it going to stick to the seller? Which one is going to be more likely to be accepted? And maybe make both offers. Say, here's my offer, because it's what I'm doing. I make 2 offers, not currently on the buying down the rate. That's something I'll negotiate later, because that didn't exist last year when I was doing it as much as we're going to have opportunity to do that now. But I'll make an offer saying, here's my amount I would pay with a conventional loan. Here's the amount I would pay seller financing. So they'll get both offers. You might make an offer saying, here's my offer. If I have to have my current interest rate, if you'll buy down the rate, here's how much my offer can be. So you might have a difference in offers there. When you talk about running the numbers, this is something I took away from Michael Zuber's class. Like the second I signed up for his class, I was taking it, I learned this, and I thought that was worth the cost of the course. And he's talked about this in his video, so I'm not giving away anything that's secret. It's, everything that's available in his course is available on his channel. It's just, in 8,000 videos. So you might want to pay for the course to get the time saving of getting it all filtered down to what matters. Make a spreadsheet, list out like 6 of the same property. You list the property 6 times, and then change elements. Change your price, change your interest rate, change it if they buy it down, change it if you do a rate. And then over at the right, you'll see what your yield is, what your cash flow could be. You can calculate all that in a spreadsheet by having it all listed out at least 6 times to look at different variables. What your down payment is, if they buy down the rate. All of those considerations to figure out which is the best one for you. And then really, sometimes it's which one you can get accepted to, not just what looks the best mathematically. Tom, howdy. Hopefully you're driving safe. Travis, howdy. Happy Tuesday. All-nighter hider, howdy. REI Stoners, can you talk about what you do with all your tenants' deposits, the account they are held, and how you figure interest is given back to each tenant? So that's the thing that most people need to be aware of, that each state has local laws on how deposits have to be held. In Washington, you are right, it has to be held in an interest-bearing account, and the tenant is supposed to get the interest because that is their money while it's in a deposit account, except for the things that you can legally charge for if there is damage when they move. For the last 10 years, it really hasn't mattered. Interest has been 0.02, 0.01%. So over a 10-year period, it might be a total of like $6, right? But if interest rates jump back up to 3-4% instead of 0.02 or 0.01%, it might be a number that you really need to track and do the math on. And when I've actually been really happy on some tenants that have moved out, they get their full deposit back. It's not my goal to keep any of that money. My goal is to find a place clean so I can just fix the things that need to be updated or have, through normal wear and tear, gotten to the point where they should be replaced. So I do this thing often on my channel where I explain my business, and the one thing I leave out is, because I have a caveat at the end. I say, so here's how my business looks with 16 rental properties. 1 checking account, 1 saving account, 1 credit card that I pay off daily. I just use it for cash back. And then 1 spreadsheet with a tab for income and a tab for expenses. And I send the spreadsheet to the CPA and I sleep like a baby. So that's pretty much how I just define my business. Like it all looks like that. And at the end, I say, make sure you check local laws because it might be a requirement for you to keep deposits in a separate interest-bearing account, which is what the case is in my area. So I say I have 1 saving account. I do have a deposit account where deposits go in there. I haven't really had to look at deposit interest, like I said, for a decade. But if interest rate starts going up on the savings accounts to where they're not as low as they are, then it might actually be a factor. Hope that helps. All-nighter hider, hit the like and encourage Dion to dress as Jay Powell for Halloween. It's funny, if I didn't know Zuber and the Lumberjack Landlord, I wouldn't know who Jay Powell was. Mad76, howdy. Great deals for everyone, agreed. All nighter hider. I'll participate till my other meeting starts, then I'll leave for this one for support. Thank you. Appreciate it. Dan Hunter. Howdy. Any insight on best practices for no hassle landscaping? I've got some ugly flower beds and walkways with grass growing out of the concrete. My solution to landscaping, and this is from personal experience, is hire it, outsource it. There's probably people who enjoy mowing a lawn or trimming trees or taking care of flower stuff. My friend purchased a duplex in November last year, was listing it for a tenant, went and $50 on flowers and did a little curb appeal thing, and the deer ate it all. So she had a $50 deer meal. But I grew up doing residential tree service. My dad, my two brothers, they all owned, one of them still owns, residential tree service. So logging or whatever, but I'm the youngest of the family out of 13. I was the manual labor. I will never willingly hold a chainsaw or a shovel or anything with landscaping again in my life, because I hate that kind of work. I joined the Marine Corps because it was so much easier than doing that. So when it comes to no hassle landscaping, I find out from the investors in my area who are the good handyman, landscaping companies to go with in the area. And often that is not the biggest ones. The bigger the landscaping company, the more likely they are to intelligently go after corporate deals, because it's where the money is. They're doing the landscaping for the banks and the landscaping for the big companies. The people doing the yards is usually somebody growing a side hustle in the area. So it's going to be very unique to where you are. I have an investor friend who has over 30 rentals. He retired at 55. He's been retired for about 3 years now, 2 to 3 years. Recently, I heard he might not be doing well with the retirement, so I've got to reach out to him and find out why. But one of his first rentals, he talks about this story often with me. He says, it was one of my first rentals. I was super proud of it. He was living in a garage. He was renting a garage from some friends. Like his first year in real estate, he made like $13,000 and saved $6,000. This was the frugal investor of his time, and then got to 30 rentals and retired. So I've looked to him for inspiration often. And he talks about one of his first rentals. He was super proud of it. So he put in like a koi pond and a little wood bridge. It was beautiful. And he put a tenant in there, and 2 months later, it was trashed. Took everything out. It's just gravel. Gets the same rent. Try not to do a rental like you would live there. If you have a Class A rental in a gated community or a Class B rental in a really nice area, you're going to spend more money on landscaping. In Class C areas, I find that tenants are okay with simple and doesn't change the rent. Same thing with the kind of upgrades where Matt, the lumberjack landlord, will do something like a total gut rehab and make it super nice inside, and then he gets maximum rents. In my area, you could have platinum countertops or plywood countertops, and you're going to get the same rent. There's almost no difference. People look at what are the rentals in the area. They don't look at any of the amenities, and they pay the area average rent. So know your market, know what's going to market better. And if you have a highly visible rental to, corner lot, busy street kind of thing, it might be more important. And then just like any other contractor, landscapers, it's a business. Get a few quotes. Let each of them know what the other quotes are. So they'll point out things like, oh, here's the flaw. They're not supplying this, or they're going to charge you for this. That just like with lending, the lenders will be the first one to point out a mistake that another lender's making. Why? Is this being weird? Trying to make sure I don't miss any chat. Thanks for that question, Dan. All-nighter hider. Currency is loaned into existence from commercial banks, not the government or the Fed. So, right, the best branding magic trick ever pulled off in the history of the world is the Federal Reserve Bank, who produces the currency that is then lent out to the government. It is not federal. Right. It says so on their website, they're not affiliated with the federal government. It's not a reserve. They don't keep stores of money, and it's not a bank. We can't go run into the counter and transact any business. So it's not any of the three things that they have in their name. So you're right. It is produced and then lent to the government. And there have been, I was watching Meet Kevin earlier today, and he talked about like 5 or 6 times where there was infinite bailouts created. Chester, howdy. Inflation is an unnecessary cost. But I love Zuber's shirt of I used inflation to get rich. Ask me how. All netter hider. That's why they want central bank decentralized coin to cut out the commercial bank's middleman and have much more control over capital. That's true. Matt Motley, howdy. John Williams, howdy. Took the military tenant, signing lease next week, putting LVP flooring in bedrooms also next week. Awesome. Cool. The thing I like about military tenants, because I was in the Marines and I was a military tenant, I know this is a thing, and I've never had to use it as a landlord. It's just something in the back of my mind that makes me a little more diversified and more relaxed. Kind of like having a Section 8 tenant, some Section 8, some military, some working or retired. This helps me relax. I'm more diversified. With Section 8, if you have a problem with a tenant, you can call the agency. With a military tenant, if you have a problem, you actually have a chain of command that you can reach out to. I've never had to do it, but I know that you generally have better tenants with military tenants because they are also aware that you can reach out to their chain of command. All netter hider. That's why I like the Avengers. We get 4 different perspectives a lot of the time. I afford very different perspectives, investing strategies, and goals. One of the reasons I look forward to doing events like this one coming up on November 12th in Fresno is you'll have, Zuber there and Beth there and Millennium Mike there and Cody there and some other presenters who have like these big, huge growth goals, larger cash flows, larger portfolios. And I'm like, according to my mom, I'm definitely on a spectrum, but I'm like at the other end of the spectrum on I wanted the most amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. And this is how you can get to financial freedom without having this big, huge machine, without being an agent, without all of those things. And none of us are right. None of us are wrong. But something each one of us says is something that you can take and add to your investing strategy because your goals are going to be different than all of ours. Chester. Got a great book to recommend on mindset, The Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz. I'm a nerd. I can't say that without saying I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Hopefully somebody got the reference. Though I'm not that old. That's a great book. I've listened to it. So I would recommend that as well. Kind of leans towards the 10x version of Grant Cardone, but a little more cerebral. All-nighter hider. Thanks, Chester. I wish I had eyes like a fly so I could read more. You have ears. I'm an avid reader. When I was like in the military and literally all the way back to high school, I would read everything, get my hands on. Love to read. The quote stuck with me from early on that, if the person who never reads only lives one life. But who has time? And as you get older, who has energy? Books will put you to sleep. But we work out, we travel, we do all of these things where you can be listening. So if you can train yourself to be an audible listener, I have 500 plus books on my Audible account without having to move them every time I move to a new house hack. Chester. The best audiobook I can recommend on understanding types of income is Cash Flow Quadrant. Absolutely. By Kiyosaki, hands down. It is his second book out of, I think, like 19 books now. And it really explains the cash flow quadrant. And once that is just the concept of the cash flow quadrant is it's like learning a new language. When you have to think to translate into a new language, you don't know that language. But when you start thinking in those words, then you can actually learn that language easier. When you understand the 4 quadrants and how money is made, and how at the beginning of this video, I talked about the biggest risk is somebody having one job instead of several sources of income. That one job is taxed at almost the highest amount. The only people taxed higher than them are the specialists that run their own business and pay both employee and employer versions of their own taxes. Yeah, that's a great book. Whether you like Kiyosaki's craziness that's happened in the last 15 years where everything is the ends of the world, you have to admit his first 2 books, definitely mind changers. I mean, he went at bat against a world that was convinced your home is your largest investment. And he came out in 1987 and said, your home isn't your largest investment. It's not even an investment. Sam, howdy. Hi, Dion. Do you have properties in your market that don't have HOA but have deed restrictions? No. No. I have not seen any deed restrictions here. I know that there are places like Cape Coral, Florida, where the city functions like an HOA by doing that. But I haven't seen it here. It could exist. I just have never seen it. Don and Beth Perkins. Howdy. Thanks, Dion. I always miss Tuesday. Cool. Sam, what criteria do you give your agent to find your, bless you, what criteria do you give your agent to find your properties with HOA and without deed? No, sorry, the squirrel threw me off. What criteria to give your agent to? Literally, my criteria to my agents just says no HOAs, no short sales, no foreclosures. Those are like my three big things I don't want. Since I have never seen a deed restriction, I would add that if they existed here, unless I found out what they were and did some more research to find out if they were something I could deal with or not. There are probably some deed restrictions in historical areas of Washington. That's probably what they would call this, where any repairs or upgrades have to be contemporary to the time. I don't think I used any of those words right just now, but they have to match the time period of the building when it was originally made. All-nighter hider. And the cost of that brought currency is called an interest rate. Agreed. And then I see we have a super chat, which is why I had my phone and it wasn't working because I could see those easier. RAS donors, thank you. I appreciate that. Free for breakfast, lunch next Sunday. Sunday, maybe. I sometimes get invited to go to the Lumberjack Landlords live stream, and that would mean I'm not available for breakfast, but I'd be available for lunch. So, yes, just come around here though. We could do a video about your hunt for your first rental here in Washington on the slides. So we got where I was here. J-Rod. Hola. ¿Cómo está usted? All-nighter hider. My legal meeting is super late. Ouch. Daniel. Howdy. RAS donors. A coworker who doesn't invest told me to stay away from Spanaway because of the crime. My Google search agrees. What's your experience, if any? I own a fourplex in Spanaway and have never had any issues. Any more issues than I have somewhere else. You tend to have more mail theft in places where people tend to have things in the mail that's worth having. And Spanaway is not a very expensive area. Generally, if you're in Spanaway, you have this one main road going through the town, Highway 7, I think it is. It's Pacific Avenue. But I tend to want to stay away from there or anywhere where there is easy access to public transport. A lot of people think of their areas where they're like, what's the walkability score? If you can walk to the transit, it's going to be higher, so it's going to rent better. In an area like Spanaway, so where your crime studies will show it's more, it's not as safe, but it's not a war zone. Public transit brings in a bad element that I don't want around my renters and have more problems around that. So that's been my experience. Pick that road, go off at least 2 blocks on either side, and I've had great luck. I actually have 2 properties in that area. They're like 12 miles apart. Spanaway is huge. That area is Parkland to Spanaway. So that's why you want to know local and you want to check with several people. Your coworker who doesn't invest, great advice, probably dated from 20 years ago. Just like in Tacoma, if you went up and you said in 2000, if you said, let's go to Hilltop in Tacoma, you can't go there. The cops don't go there alone. And there's a military helicopter that patrols it at night with a spotlight, right? Like that's an area. Now it's kind of the upscale area of Tacoma. So you have to have, if it is current information, have they lived there a long time, and have they really been paying attention to the things that an investor would? Shelley, howdy. I put a home that I inherited on the market a week ago and have received 2 offers. Both offers are from investors. Because they are investors, it makes me think I'm overlooking something. Am I wrong? There's a bunch of questions that I don't know if would they be able to think of them quick enough to get you to get them in the chat. it's a home, so single family. If you have investors coming in and making offers, have you ran what the cash flow would be if it was a rental? And with current interest rates and home prices, are people with FHA being priced out of being able to buy it? Because generally there's a 4-tier system, and who will pay the most for a single family house? It's normally a home buyer because they buy based on payment. Then investors because we buy based on yield. Then flippers because they're going to have to do some work before they sell it. And then wholesalers who are looking for that gap to transact it without having to put any work into it. So if your investors are coming in before your home buyers, it's not, I don't know that I would think that you're missing something. Are you going to get the price that you want? How did you get your comps? How long is other properties that are similar to yours sitting on the market in your area? Like I said, there's a whole bunch of kind of follow-up questions on if you're missing something there. How much trust do you have in your agent, right? How long have they been in the business? What is their support system like? I don't know that it would mean that you're overlooking something. I have 3 offers in this week on places that are probably only investors making offers. Home buyers, so you posted it this week, home buyers a lot of the times talk to an agent, and agents have short memories. They remember how they've been doing it. Person comes in and says, I want to buy a house. Agent takes them to look at 20 or 30 houses, and then they make some offers. In a week, you might not see home buyers making offers. One of the things that helped me make purchases in the last couple of years was speed. My agents and my lenders knew I wanted to have an offer in within an hour or 2 of that property hitting the market. Levi, howdy. Eugen, howdy. From Belgium. Thank you for your time in explaining and re-explaining everything again. It just sticks to the brain. Then you see we're lazy and my motivation skyrockets. Well, I struggle with this one because I know everyone's being polite when they say, oh, we don't think you're lazy. I know nobody wants to be called lazy. I was the lazy brother because I was the one who joined the military because that was the easier way of life. 10 years to reach financial freedom because the motivation was to live the life I have now. Like, if I don't want to get out of bed, I don't have to get out of bed. I have a lot of no pains days, like today. And that motivation to have full control over my schedule so I can do whatever I want is the lazy. So a lot of people think you have to work 80 hours a week. You have to be hustling every day. I mean, I worked 50 to 60 hours a week at the truck driving school for the last 13 years. And I, in the beginning, purchased one property every 2 years, right? I lived in a house. I moved into an apartment. For 2 years, I saved money. So for 2 years, I didn't do anything with real estate. Purchased a duplex to move into house hack. For 2 years, I didn't do anything but save for real estate. 2 years to buy the next duplex. This isn't something where you just start doing deal after deal after deal like Cody and Christian, which means it's entirely possible and you can do that. I would never call them lazy. I'm lazy. I did one purchase and then the cash flow started to build up. So they sped up to, a deal every year or so, and then 2 in 2020, and then 1 last year. And then I haven't even done one this year. Don't need to. I will, because I got to put the money to work somewhere. But I am absolutely lazy. And so I know it's polite to tell me, oh, I don't think you're lazy because you're super busy. Joey, howdy. Hey there, Dion. Have you ever considered pursuing a deal where you would assume the seller's FHA, VA, or USDA loan? I have not done a subject to where I assume the loan. I wouldn't hesitate if it was the way that the deal made sense. I tried to offload a house with a subject to that was a conventional owner-occupied loan that wasn't FHA. Fell through. The person ended up couldn't qualify to take over the lending. FHA, I don't think I would hesitate. USDA, I don't think I'd hesitate, depending as long as the property qualified, then it qualifies. For the VA, I'd have to do some research before I took over that and find out how it affects their entitlement and any other rules that I don't know on assuming a VA loan. But I wouldn't hesitate. Subject to is, especially if you're listening, watching, or learning from Pace Morby, that subject to is a huge industry. Another one of the reasons why I'm absolutely confident in my ability to say that I'm lazy and that my investing strategy would work for lazy people is because all of my deals, it's 100% from the MLS, traditional conventional lending. I haven't even used my own VA loan yet. Like, there's a couple reasons, but I haven't used my own VA loan. Easy to reproduce. Without anything creative. Like, what I think might help in the next couple of years is assuming somebody's loan because they have such a good interest rate compared to what you can get now. So it might be a more attractive strategy now for some people. Matt, howdy. Getting ready to sell my business soon and go 100% into real estate. Can't wait. Awesome. I went 100% into real estate, no stocks, emptied out my retirement accounts in 2020 when they let you do it without a penalty. Like, I am 100% in one asset class, but more diversified than almost everyone I encounter. I diversify the properties, their locations. I diversify the tenant type. I diversify the properties into areas that have several economic drivers. Like, I've looked at several ways to diversify in that one asset class because I don't have stocks and because I don't have retirement accounts. Although I do, because I contributed for the match. I kept doing that for the match. So I suggest doing that because the math says to do it. But it's frustrating knowing that money, which is now up to like $11,000 in the last couple of years. So it's not like it's a life-changing amount, but it's an amount of money is locked in there. And if I want to take it out, I have to pay a penalty. Since I stopped working this year, I am probably, even though I will have 6 figures of income next year, here's the beauty of real estate. I'm going to look like I made less than $0 on paper, right? So when people say it's very hard to retire because you have to have healthcare, it's going to cost more, right? Because your employer's been paying 80 to 90%, you've been paying 10 to 20%. So now you're going to pay 100%. So it's more expensive. Well, with Obamacare, with the way it worked, it's the less income you made, the more programs there were for you to get healthcare. And even with 6 figures of income, that system factors in depreciation. So it'll look like I didn't make any money. It's not cheating the system if you use the system the way it's intended. They are encouraging. We have a tax system to encourage you to invest because we need housing. So they're doing that. So I'm following the encouraging rules. Every now and then I'll mention how I have 6 figures of income, but it looks like this year. So, and I'm transparent on numbers. Don't sue me. Last year, $128,000 profit, carried forward an $8,900 loss. And people will go, well, if you carried forward a loss, how are you going to buy the next property? You look like you're losing money. You look like lenders take out depreciation when factoring your income. So it looks like I had 6 figures of income last year. So I'm okay with that. And then, see, we have a super chat from Brandon. Howdy, Brandon. Thanks for the outstanding content. I've learned a lot. Thanks. And then I want to make sure if there is a question here, I am not missing it. Because I know how the super chats work. It's a little frustrating. You can only sometimes fit questions. And so I've missed questions when somebody does a super chat, and I don't want to do that. And I hope everybody understands I appreciate the super chats. It actually helps the channel grow because it shows YouTube. Yes, if you hit the like button and Angel gets its wings. If you make a comment, it says that there's interaction, but super chats actually says that somebody likes the content. And I don't see a question. So thank you for that, Brandon. And if I missed a question, I am sorry. I will find it eventually. Joey, it would be awesome to get a loan in 2s or 3s, but definitely harder to find assumable loan deals. Yes, because people know that their asset is that loan and moving. They're the locked in people. You'd have to find a distressed situation, not so much a distressed property, where somebody needed to sell. Trending topics. Howdy. And what do you think of when rates will start coming down? So I'm definitely not a prediction channel. And there was a perfect statement said in a mastermind group that was misinterpreted. So I want to see if I could do it without starting the misinterpretation. There is no good time to buy real estate. That's the statement. Clarified by saying, if you're waiting for a good time to invest, you're making a mistake. So that's why I don't want to predict. I always want to say, and I hesitate to use the term always, but I'm going to use it in this sentence. It is always a good day to buy a great deal. The idea is knowing what a great deal today is with today's rates, today's prices, today's rents, not anticipating anything to happen in the future of them going up or down. Because here's what's happened. Let's say rates come down, because there's two ways that I think rates could come down. So this is not a prediction. I'm not even going to touch my crystal ball. It's way over there. And it breaks LVP flooring if you drop it, just so you know. First, I predicted, and this is why I don't like to predict, I'm losing $1, it looks like, to Michael Zuber and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, which I'm going to have to give to them, and they're going to shadow box and have in their videos. I was listening to Ryan Pineda, Grant Cardone, a couple of other people who had this the way I'm looking at this now, the way I'm going to try to explain it in this is interest rates didn't cause the prices to go up in the last couple of years. We produced 80% of our currency in the last 2 years. It's helicopter money, $120 billion just being produced and pushed out into the wrong parts of the public sometimes. People had to be bribed to come in off of unemployment because in Washington state, people were making $75,000 a year to sit at home on unemployment. So wages had to go up. So you had record wage inflation, people changing jobs. We've had the great resignation, over 4 million people a month for the last year leaving companies, but unemployment under 4%. So we have record job changing for big wage increases, which is causing inflation. So the normal tools, that the levers, pulleys, and things that they can hit to impact inflation is rates. We're going to raise rates and fix inflation. So they're going to raise rates and inflation is going to go up. And they're going to raise rates and inflation is going to go up. And then somebody's going to go, holy crap, that's not what caused inflation. So they're going to have that pivot and they might cut Fed rate. That was what I predicted by the end of 2022. And I think I undershot it by quite a bit. So it might be further. So one possibility is they realize that's not going to stop inflation. The average person right now, if they can actually logically process this, if they take the time to do this, it's not if they could, it's if they will. The government is calling for a stop in hiring, a stop in wage increases. Imagine that if you vote people into office and their solution to stopping inflation is telling your employer, don't give your people a raise. And that's what's happening. They're trying to push up unemployment. They're trying to keep pressure on wages going down. You have a whole section of the society saying we want a higher minimum wage, and then you have the government saying, yeah, but wage inflation is what's causing inflation now. So that's the time where I could see wages or inflate rates coming down within the next couple of months. And the other thing is they raise rates to a point where it does finally kill the economy enough to cause that recession that they're hoping it does. And rates plateau for a long time, a couple of years. And then rates might come down or go back up. The mistake, I think, would be to think that rates have to come back down because we have short memories. We know that in the last 2 years, we saw 3%. We saw under 3% on some owner-occupied highest credit people, right, in the twos. For decades, we never saw under 10%. That can happen again. That's why I don't want to predict. I want to know if I buy a deal now, like I made 3 offers this week, that if those offers go through, those will cash flow. Those will get me close to a 10% cash on cash return if everything goes decent. Doesn't even have to go great, just decent. And I'm still going to be making those offers. So sorry, trending. I wish I had a better answer, but I'm just not a predictor because there's a couple channels that are really good, like the Uneducated Economist. I mean, he literally says it in his things, like my brother with his tree service. It says unlicensed arborist. And he gets business because people think that means less expensive. I am definitely uneducated when it comes to finances. All I know is what it took to reach financial freedom the lazy way. Lauren, no specific question, here to help promote your channel because you put out great content. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I hope you're having a good shift if you're working tonight. Yeah. Stephan, howdy. May the Schwartz be with you. Okay, good. I'm not the only nerd here. Thank you. Thanks. Alizette, I wish I could upload a picture of my one rental at a time that was just delivered to my doorstep. So was it the book or the 15 conversations one? Cool. Awesome. I am. So if you have the hard copy of that, Michael Zuber, I consider him a friend. We've worked together. I mean, we've only met in person once. We're going to meet again next month. And, but we've kind of worked together trying to help people for over a year now, right? I narrated the 15 Conversations book. And my one critique of the One Rental at a Time book, well, I loved the idea that I found this at about the 7 or 8 year mark of my investing. And it basically spelled out my strategy. It was like, you just get to 4, your life changes, one rental at a time from the MLS, traditional lending. Like, it was all the things that would have solidified what I was trying to do and made me think, oh, somebody else did this. So I wish I found it sooner. My one critique was he paid like $5,000 to have a robot voice read it for Amazon. Like, no tone, no inflection. So I'm recording this for him now too, but I'm not good at editing, so it takes a long time. I'm about that far in, so I'm maybe a fifth of the way. So I'd say another month or 2 to be done. You would think if you retired, you'd have plenty of time to do things like that, but it's really hard to find time to get to a place where it actually works like a sound studio where it's quiet. So we're going to be re-releasing the One Rental at a Time with me. Hope it's better than a robot. Chester, that's a rather loud sneeze from a squirrel. It was 2 loud sneezes. That's great. Frank. Howdy, Frank. When using a $50,000 home equity line of credit for a 25% down on an investment property, would you pay down the home equity line of credit, or would you pay down the mortgage to speed up the equity to do a cash out refi to pay the HELOC back? That is a great bunch of questions that link together based on a lot of things on what you're trying to accomplish. First, what is the rate on the home equity line of credit? What is the rate on the mortgage? Does the mortgage come with any kind of early prepayment penalty? If you pay down the pay down the mortgage to speed up equity, I would not do that. So you're asking me what I would do. Not advice. This is what I would do. I don't care about equity. I talk about the tenants pay down $3,000 a month in equity, and my net worth changed by $600,000 last year. That doesn't have no impact on me whatsoever. The net worth is totally fictitious. If your goals are aligned more with Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, Michael Zuber, or maybe a Millennial Mike or somebody like that, and you want to recycle capital, and your goal is to have more units with less cash flow, then it makes sense to maybe do that. But home equity line of credit, I think it'd be the one I focus to pay down because it's reusable funds. Its a rate is locked, but usually for just 10 years. And if you, based on personal experience from my brother, that is how he reached financial freedom. He used a home equity line of credit, bought a property, paid it off, bought a property, paid it off, bought a property. He got to 10 paid off properties by using his home equity line of credit. So since I buy for cash flow, I would be doing the same strategy using the home equity line of credit, but then having mortgages on the properties that the tenants pay off over 30 years. Here's the twist now. My properties all have less than 5% interest, although one have less than 4% interest, mortgages on them. So I would never focus on paying on that early. Interest rates lower than inflation, right? And I say never, but there might come a time where I pay off a mortgage just because I want the cash flow and don't want more units to take care of. So always know that what you're choosing to do aligns with what your goal is currently. So I don't know that I give you a good, clear answer on that. Yeah, I wouldn't pay off the mortgage. The caveat is, does the mortgage have an 8% interest and the home equity is 5%? But home equity is going to change because it's not fixed. So I would focus on paying off the home equity line of credit. All right, stoners, sounds good. Love the slides. Yep, me too. As it's raining, though, make sure you bring pants that can get wet because it's going to rain. And I still go down the slides. Let me see, where was I? Chat moved, which is great. It means there's questions. I'll have questions. Okay. William, howdy. Do you see modular homes causing price disruption? No. Nope. Actually, even the mobile homes, the trailers in the middle of nowhere here are selling for almost the same as houses are. So it depends on what lending opens up as options, but I don't see price disruption happening from modular homes, not in my area. So, but I only know my local area, which is Pierce and Thurston counties in Washington State. Maybe in another area, it could be. It'd be like saying, I like to use market-wide statistics of, investing firms only own a certain percentage of the market. So they're not going to impact it enough to where everybody's like, oh, the investing firms are making it to where nobody can buy a house, right? So I would say market-wide, yeah, true. No, but if they bought everything in your area, in your one little area, and all of it was bought by them, and then they control that market, that's very different. Cook-keeking. Howdy. Interesting name. If I buy a home that already has a tenant under lease, does the seller of the home give me the security deposit that the tenant paid to them so that when and if the tenant moves out, and then I don't see the rest of your stuff, didn't come in. There it is. Their security deposit returns won't come out of your pocket. Yes, the seller doesn't, title company does. So part of the closing and with the title company is they're going to factor in, they should make sure utilities don't have a lien, make sure there's contractor liens on your property, like all the things that title does. But part of it is going, you closed on, so here's an example. I closed on the 6th of January, 2020 on the fourplex. The tenants had already paid rent for January. It went to the previous owner. So they prorate, the title company goes, here's the money coming in from the bank and the down payment and everything I brought to the table and whatever the loan is. So they have all this money that's going to go to the seller. Before it's released to the seller, here are the things that need to happen. Any security deposits from leases that are in place are held back to be given to the buyer. Any rent proration from the date we close is held back to be given. So I got from the 6th of January to the end of January rents and security deposits from the title company. And that's why when you go to close on a property, a lot of times, a lot of agents will want to close sometimes sooner because it can impact when they get paid. Sooner is better for them. And sellers might have a certain reason they want to close by a certain date because they need the funds to buy whatever they're doing or whatever the reason is, right? Title companies are resistant to moving dates because they have to recalculate every aspect of it. Your amortization for that, your rents, your prorate, all that kind of stuff. Gets held back by title and given to you. And then make sure you follow your local laws, like here in Washington. Security deposits have to be set into a separate interest-bearing account because deposits belong to the tenant. And then something you didn't ask, but I want to say, just in case you didn't know, you are bound to the existing leases because a lease is between the tenant and the property, not really the tenant and who owns the property. So whatever the rules are for the current existing lease, you can't do any changes until the end of that lease. You can't force any changes. You can do changes if both sides agree. Daniel, howdy. What else do you recommend to be wary of in regards to location? My biggest fear with location is so I guess there's two biggest fears. How do you be the biggest? Biggest? No. I was channeling my inner Kronk. Is it a war zone? Can you go there safely to collect rents? Because if you can't, I wouldn't even feel comfortable sending a property manager there to collect the rents because you're putting them at risk. So I try not to own in war zones. I don't have the funds to buy an entire area and then, what do they say, gentrify it and clean it up and try to fix the whole place. Like I don't know that many people that are that big to do that. So war zone is the first, is to make sure it's a kind of a safe area because you want your tenants to be safe too. But the second thing is, how many economic drivers are there? A lot of people purchased a rental in a port town where there's a water mill, right? Or water mill, is that a thing? A paper mill. And then the paper mill shuts down. So the rent area in there was decimated for 10 years. If they couldn't survive those 10 years, they were done. And then Airbnb became a thing and port towns became really big because it's on the beach. So there are different ways to look at it. So I want at least 3, so more than 2 of something like a base, a port, a college, a hospital, Boeing, Amazon, large population, something where several different things would have to change before the tenant base is impacted. The location of the property, I wouldn't want super busy road, super loud road next to a noisy club. The normal things that you wouldn't want to live next to, because if you don't want to live there, it's more likely to cause tenant turnover because they're not going to want to live there either. And if they move in even from a distance and don't know that that's what the place is before they move in, and then they move in, they're going to move out the first opportunity they can. So it goes like this. First, we look at math. Will I get the yield I'm looking for? Second, we look at location. Does it meet my economic drivers' goals? Third, I don't want my properties all close together. So I try all my properties except for 2 are more than 10 miles apart. So they're within an hour's drive of where I live, but they're more than 10 miles apart so that they're not pulling tenants from the same sources. It's one of the reasons why I started with duplex, triplex, fourplex instead of 10plex, not just lending, but because I wouldn't want all 10 units to draw all of their tenants from the same source, and then the place closes down and I don't have any tenants. But if I have duplexes all spread out and they're not near the same economic drivers, I'm not going to be impacted all at once. And then so it goes yield, location, and then after, economic drivers, the physical things of the property that are going to help limit tenant turnover. So I want things like a washer dryer hookup inside the unit because somebody using shared laundry or a laundromat is waiting for a place to open. I want side-by-side units if I'm doing small multifamily, because over under units, you have noise complaints and a plumbing issue can affect more than one unit at a time. For me, I want 2 bedrooms and a garage or more because more space equals more stuff. But in some areas, that might not be the way to go. If it's more of a retirement community or around a college, single bedrooms might perform better. So kind of know your area. And something as specific as in Washington State, a property with a carport can sometimes get more rent than a place with a garage. So know what works in your area. So depending on your temperature levels, different things might market better. Great question. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. Surf Marco. Spaceballs reference. Exactly. Howdy. Gano. Howdy. From Oklahoma. Nice. James J. Howdy. With rising interest rates making deals more difficult to find, is there a percent limit to the interest rate buy down? How much cash reserves is needed to obtain a favorable buy down? Thanks. It's usually based on a point system. So, 1%, 2%, 3% of the deal. And I have heard from most lenders that I talk to, 3-point buy downs that you can do on 30-year product. With a 40-year product, to get the rates to where you want them, it can be a 4th-point buy down. So each lender is a little bit specific, and you're going to want to check currently. So a lot of times I talk about how to get the best interest rates. I have a video on my channel on how to get the best interest rates. And it's to get a lender's offer in writing and then share that offer with several other lenders and then cross-reference and let them all kind of feeding frenzy to figure out who's willing to do the most to beat the competition and go with that one. And it's not always just rate. Sometimes it's the amount of the buy down. Sometimes they'll say, oh, you could do our buy down and we'll take 50% off the buy down. Sometimes, and they'll waive other closing costs. Lenders will be the first one to point out another lender doing something that they can beat. CC, howdy from Temecula. It is hard to say I'm sorry. Hard to not say I'm sorry when somebody says they're from California, because I moved out of California and don't want to go back. But howdy. And my brother still invests in California and does just fine. Levi, howdy. Thanks for being a member. What is your favorite question to answer from a new investor? What about from an experienced investor? So from a new investor, my favorite question to answer is good debt and bad debt, explaining the difference when they're finally starting to understand. That's why they're trying to become an investor. They've decided acquiring assets is the way to go, but have they decided that when used properly, here's how leverage can benefit you? So good debt versus bad debt. That's my favorite new investor topic. My favorite experienced topic for experienced investors is how to get my tenants to ask me to raise the rent. It's my favorite question to answer because almost everyone, it's a super simple strategy. But when I explain it, it takes like 5 minutes. I explain it to them. I watch the brain explode. Like I could see the emoji of them going, holy cow. This will work on my portfolio. This will make this much more money. It won't cost me anything. So those are my 2 favorite questions: how to explain good debt to bad debt for the newer investor, and how to explain to an experienced investor, here's a simple strategy you can add to your portfolio. And then so just the binder strategy from last year to this year took me from 128,000 in profit to a projected 168,000 in profit, which I'm passing already. And I've got 2 months to go. So I undershot what I thought I was going to do this year. Because of that strategy. I have not bought any properties yet this year. Just that strategy alone has increased income that much, which is great when you retire in a year like this. Like I retired in July. So more income. It's hard math. Hopefully you can understand this. Hopefully I can put this into words. More money doesn't suck. Derek, howdy. When are we getting a Dion podcast? Ooh. So I have considered a couple of times taking my longer live streams and turning them into a podcast because they're already there. But we go with what we understand, right? That's why I don't invest in stocks. I don't understand them. I don't invest in crypto because I don't understand. I don't know if it's good or bad investment. I just know I don't understand it. So I don't invest in it. I understand real estate. I've been a renter. I've done repairs on buildings. Like, I get real estate. So I invest in it. I watch YouTube. Like, I pay for YouTube Premium. I listen to YouTube all the time when I'm not physically actually, this will be bad. Actually, I do listen to while I'm playing World of Warcraft too. But like if I'm watching a TV show or I'm at the movies, I might not be listening. But if I'm driving or literally I listen when I go to sleep. Like, I'm always trying to learn something about finances because at some point the addiction will go away, because I made it to 40 without ever having $1,000 in the bank. And it was because I was financially uneducated. I thought chasing a pension was the way to go. I tried the Marine Corps, got downsized after Desert Storm. I tried law enforcement, got downsized after the 2008 housing crash. I tried working for a trucking company that had a pension and they went on strike right after that. So like literally everything I've chased for a pension because I thought that was the way to retire, never worked out. And my first few years of investing in real estate were bad. I lost money left and right. I tried to quit, tried to give my house away, couldn't do it. And then I educated myself. First, it was some podcasts because that's what was available. And then audiobooks, and then found YouTube. And based on what I've learned from YouTube, I was able to make work completely optional, walk away from a 6-figure job. Like, it was just nothing. Don't even care. Haven't looked back. I walked away from $2 million in golden handcuffs. If you'd like me to explain that, let me know in the comments, because I think I've already explained that in videos. But I don't care. Literally, I got to the point in my life where somebody's saying, you can have $2 million if you want to. And I said, I don't need that. That's not worth 1 hour's work for me, let alone 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week. So I understand YouTube, but I totally get that there are some people. This is why I kind of want to make a book. I know that there's some people who are like I used to be, and they love to read. So I want to get this information, and it isn't going to be a story. So it's going to be, it might not be for everybody. So don't buy the book if I make it, if you're looking for a story, because there might be a couple paragraphs that explain my story, but it's going to read like a instruction manual. Here is how I find a tenant. Here is how I screen a tenant. Here is how I find a handyman. This is how I keep my handyman. Like, each chapter is going to literally be a breakdown of how to run a real estate business for the few people that are looking for, okay, I'm at this point, I don't want to go find anything. I need the chapter that says, how do I get the best interest rates for my loan? Like whatever the current topic is, and they just go to that chapter and look it up. I want that in writing. And then I'll make an audiobook out of that, because there are people that learn that way. There are people who listen to podcasts that I'm missing, that I'm not getting this information to. So I would love to make a podcast, but I need to learn the tech first. And then Buddy 3 took back a question to make me wonder forever what he was thinking, or they were thinking. Hola, mija, ¿cómo está? Good evening, and friends. Howdy. William, what happens when you turn your primary home, lived, owned, rented for 20 years? Do you get a depreciated for the remaining 7.5 years as a rental? That is a great question. How does depreciation work? So you can depreciate an asset that is not your primary residence. Also, you can depreciate part of a duplex, part of a triplex or fourplex, the percentage of it that you are not using as your primary residence. So for me, I'm in a fourplex right now, I'm depreciating 75%. So now how that works, I'm trying to think. I owned a property from 2000, turned it into a rental around 2010-ish, 2009 to 10, started depreciation. So it was, and yeah, that's a great question for a CPA. How does that depreciation schedule look? And do they factor that, since you had the write-off when it was your primary, that, yeah, a question I don't know the answer to. Let me take a picture of that so I could do some research. That is a great question. How does that work? I'm actually stunned that I can answer most of the questions that come in without having to do that, which means you guys are doing the right questions. You're not asking. So that's a good question, because I've done that and I don't know how it works. I do know that the second you have a rental, so the 2009-10, when I started renting that place, I hired a tax pro, because I don't know. So not only can you depreciate it, but some things depreciate over 5 years, some things 15, some things 27.5. If it's 5 units or more for commercial, it's 33 or 39 or whatever source you're looking at can tell you a different number. I don't know how any of that works, and I don't want to. I'm going to look this up because that's a good question. I'll probably actually reach out to my tax guy and say, hey, how did this work? Because we did this. But a tax pro is worth every penny. And maybe Dividend Dave can give us an answer in the comments because that's the business he works in. That's a great question for Zuber too. Or Matt, maybe that'll be a topic for Thursday for the Three Amigos. Also, is mortgage interest always a tax write-off even after 27.5 years? Yes, so interest is always a tax write-off. I want to say always, but I'm sure there's some times where it's not. But it does, the 27.5 years impacts depreciation, not mortgage. And a lot of people think, well, you have a 30-year mortgage, so it should be paid off pretty soon. But so many people refinance that you're probably not coming up on that at that same time that you would expect. Yeah, so that is still a write-off even after 27 and a half years. Hit the like button, fam. I would appreciate that. John L. Howdy. This is the first time I have been able to listen to an actual live. Nice to meet you. I listen to you and the Three Amigos on YouTube all the time. Y'all are fantastic. Well, thank you. I appreciate you hanging out. I totally understand that, you know, if this is the first time you made it to a live, maybe you listen to the lives later. I do the once a week, 2 to 3 hour live stream. What time is it? It's only been an hour and 20 minutes. We've gotten through some great questions tonight. I am trying to make shorter lives, like 15-minute lives. I actually literally have an hourglass to do those because there are people who like shorter content. So I'll do those more and more often too. And then Buddy 3. Buddies gives me an actual question and doesn't take it back yet. Howdy. A few weeks ago, I asked you what to do when Section 8 denied my rent increase request. I responded with your binder strategy. It worked. They increased the rent 14%. Thank you. Awesome. That's exactly what my experience was like. I reached out to them. They sent me an email saying, this is the cap, period, no matter what. I sent back what the comps were with an emailed binder strategy and got the increase I was looking for. So 14% increase. That's awesome. Congratulations. Lauren, I am indeed on the clock and waiting for the calls to start coming in. Hopefully it's a good night. Buddy, for your 3 deals, are you factoring in 6 to 7% interest, and some of them maybe more? Because if it's a small multifamily, I'm not house hacking, you're going to get another half a point on there. And they're close to 10%. I think one was like an 8.9 and the other 2 were closer to 10%. I don't anticipate getting them because I'm doing asking and a little over, and I think I'll get outbid because it's still a hot market here in Washington, but I'm going to keep hunting and I'll find the deals. I don't need all of them. It's kind of like when I was a cop and somebody said, why do you pull me over and not that guy over there? I would always ask, ever go fishing? Did you catch all the fish? I don't need all of the deals. I just need one. I want to close on one more between now and February. And then I think I'm actually done. I think after that, I'm going to roll cash flow into depreciating liabilities, but paid for by assets. Never compare year 12 to year 1 or year 3. The statement is usually no, compare year 10 to year 1 because people have different goals at that point. Yeah, they do. Lauren, that's a great question. I too live in Tacoma and wondering where in the surrounds you can find a 10% cash on cash currently with high prices and interest rates. So I don't want to give the location away, but one of the places I made an offer on is a house with an ADU. I went like well under 15% area average rents to get, that's the 8.9% interest, 8.9% yield. It's in a town called Fife. So, like I said, though, I'll probably get outbid. I'll just keep making offers. I'm not, and these are in, with the first couple of like 5 days coming on the market. So I'm not making lower offers. If it hits the 10-day mark, I start to make under asking offers and we'll see how that goes. And then my chat moved. There we go. Scott, howdy. What is the average age of your investment properties? How old is the house that is too old to invest in? I don't think that there is an age of a house that's too old to invest in. What I would look at is, when were the updates done? Does it have plumbing that's all cast iron and has to be, if that's a thing, or is it PEX tubing? Do you have knob and tube wiring? It's not like a 150-year-old house, all of a sudden the foundation is just going to quit, right? Like if you're in lumberjack landlord's area, I think all of his properties are over 100 years old. So in Washington State, because it's West Coast, doesn't have the age of the East Coast. 7 properties, 6 were built between 1980 and 1992. So a 12-year gap span is what I've gone for. I have one that was built in 1921, but it had all of the updates that I would expect and want. So I don't know that there's an age I wouldn't invest in. I do know that if you go 1979 or older, you want to look at asbestos test, lead-based test, make sure you give the proper warning to tenants. Keep a higher reserve, because Matt, the lumberjack landlord, has learned this last year, that if you have to do lead remediation, it can cost this much money, have that much money in reserve. So it's not a deal breaker. Yeah, that's how I look at it. Poplar. Howdy, Poplar Holdings. Robert Kiyosaki states, when market goes down, rent goes up. How's the statement holding up so far? 100%. Market went down in 08, rents around here 9 and 10 went up, they skyrocketed. Not so much the housing market, but the stock market went down 30% in 2020, and then it recovered. One of the quickest recoveries ever. And our rents in the last 2 years have gone up over 40%, 30 to 40%. So not over, 30 to 40%. I did the binder strategy on all existing tenants at the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022, that strategy that gets my tenants to request a rent increase. And at tenants' request, my rents went up 20 to 28%. That was the spread. All of them asked for the rent to go up 20 to 28%. The problem there is, in the last 2 years, the market also went up. I'm not seeing the market come down that everybody keeps talking about. There might be some specific areas that are. We're still up year over year in all but 3 markets. And there's like almost 400 actual local markets. So like any other investor, I would love to see prices come down, buy properties on sale. That doesn't mean rent goes down. In 2008, when the market went really down, it's because a lot of people went through foreclosures. Most of them became renters. Some moved in with family. Some probably became homeless, but there were government programs in place. Rents went way up. There has never been, since we started tracking the data, a 5-year period where market-wide rents went down. You have some local areas like Detroit when the car manufacturers move away, or in Silicon Valley when the .com crash happens. There are local areas where rents can crash and market can crash. But market-wide, we've never seen the rents go down, because rents are tied to wages. Wages are tied to inflation. Sometimes wage inflation causes inflation, but it almost always causes rents to go up. Caveat. When building a rental portfolio, I invested and planned on rents going down 50% and not having go back to work, even though I've never seen a rent decrease in my life in the markets that I live in. I invested expecting a 50% decrease, because I talked about this a little bit earlier. I don't know if you were here. I don't invest in stocks. I don't want to own and run a business. I am 100% in real estate and retired and will never work again in my life, because I've diversified the property locations. I've diversified the tenant types. And I don't over leverage. While I was in growth mode trying to add properties, I tried to stay around 70% leverage. So I was getting the most amount of appreciation on multiples of what I invested, but I had a gap to exit a property if I had to without having to write a check. Now that I'm retired, I'm keeping about a 50, my goal is about a 50% loan to value, of the whole portfolio. I'm at about 40. So I have some wiggle room there. I might actually someday use a VA loan to buy the next property and go 100% leveraged on that property, which would make the overall more leveraged. But I'm planning on rents decreasing 50% and still not having to go back to work. I wouldn't have retired if that wasn't the case. To quote Jack Reacher, only because I've read the book and haven't seen the second season that's coming out, but in the second season, Jack Reacher is going to say, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Christine, howdy. Dion, how long did it take for your hourly wage to increase to your truck driving school, and did it impact your ability to invest on your first couple homes? So chronology of wage increases. $17 an hour first year. By the end of second year, $19 an hour. By third year, I was a salaried position at $48,000. By fifth year, I was at 61,000. Seventh year, eighth year, ninth year, 61,000. And then all of a sudden, 100, 105, 140, like a lot of growth in the last couple of years. Never impacted it. All it really did in the last couple of years was impacted how much I can save for my next property right now, which is the largest amount of money I've ever seen in my life. All of my investing was done on less than six-figure income up until 2018-ish to 19. Cash flow from rentals and house hacking had the biggest impact on my ability to invest, and then the income snowball. I can't quantify enough what the income snowball is like, and it happens around year five or six. Second house hack, so being able to rent out the unit I was living in and cash flowing positive on the next house hack, coupled with rent increases and mortgages staying the same, and then paying off one mortgage because at the time it made sense. It wouldn't make sense now. So I think it would be hard if your household income is less than $50,000. It's a lot harder. That's total. Both people making less than 50,000 together. You're in survival mode. Like you're struggling to make it paycheck to paycheck. That's going to make those first 5 years the hardest. If you can make more than 50 to where you can save 5 to 20,000 a year to invest, it's going to be a lot easier. So remember, saving is a component, is a couple of things put together. Increased income, decreased expenses. We know just a lot of people think I'm going to save, I'm not going to spend, I'm going to cut out streaming services, I'm going to do no more lattes, latte factor, whatever. I'm going to house hack, I'm going to reduce it. So you can only save so much. Is it overtime? Is it shifting companies? Is it learning a new skill? Is it picking up something else to increase your income? It doesn't need to be, you don't need to make $300,000-$400,000 a year. That would be nice. But if you can get it above 50,000 in most markets, it's not that hard to invest within 10 years to reach financial freedom. For me, the struggle in the first 5 years was also taking care of $89,000 in bad debt I didn't know about. So it was like an added little, let's struggle with this. Cheers. That water makes me hard to breathe. And mine's water. Scott. Howdy. Thanks for your content. I appreciate your perspective. I really like how you explain things. Thank you. I have to do it in such a way where it would work for me. And I'm not saying I'm intelligent or not intelligent. I have to do it in such a way where somebody with memory issues can keep this stuff top of mind awareness without having to think or do research every time I make a decision. This helps me as much as it's helping anybody watching. Christine, what do you think is the best source of funding aside from FHA and conventional with the market transitioning to high interest, less buyers, less inventory? The best, for me, in my opinion, which I haven't done yet, but I'm making offers with every one of my offers that's going out now, is seller financing. I know that Pace Morby's group is talking about subject to as being like the new holy grail. Sure, if you can find it. But if you can find something like the 50-40-10 strategy where somebody has more than 50% equity so that you can take a 50% mortgage out. So 50% or less loan to value gets you the best interest rate. And then you do a blended rate with the 40% that the seller's carrying at like 2 or 3% to bring your blended rate down. And you do have to come up with 10% down for that strategy. Or seller financing. And remember that there is no set path for seller financing. Words are hard. You educate the seller on what seller financing is. So you can set up 30-year fixed rate debt at 0% interest with no balloon payments, if that's what the seller wants, as long as it's the price that they want. You could do 2 or 3% interest seller financing. You could do 5%. You could do all kinds of things that make sense for the deal that you find. The problem with seller finance deals is you generally have to find somebody who has a lot of equity, has owned the property for years and is wanting to exit. Your goal there is to find the 65 to 75-year-old who's owned a property for 30 years and is trying to get out. And seller financing is no large capital gains hit, consistent income without having to deal with tenants, toilets, and termites. And they get a note, which is an actual financial instrument that they can then sell. And you can set the interest rate to what makes sense. There's no set path for that. So that would be, for me, the best source of funding to answer your question specifically. But I don't think FHA is good for most people. I think conventional is usually the way to go. And remember, interest rates are part of it. Price, rates, rents. How does that calculate to your yield? Really watch what's happening with rents. Wayne, howdy. What are your thoughts on hunting for deals with seller financing, motivated sellers instead of traditional lending? That's great. That's perfect timing for that question. Do you have advice on how to get in front of motivated sellers? There's a lot of strategies that you can use, Wayne, that I didn't talk about in my little, soapbox speech that I just did on seller financing. But there are skip trace companies that can look up, easier than learning how to do it yourself, probably. There's probably YouTube channels that talk specifically about this too, on finding owners who have owned for several years, finding owners who own from out of state, finding places that are behind on taxes, like finding all kinds of ways to find the deals you're looking for. Driving for dollars is a good way. A lot of people will also, literally to find deals that are just not on the market and this is kind of stealing some strategies from Christian and Cody Multifamily that have a channel here on YouTube that you should watch if you're trying to do a lot more deals faster than what I did. How to find the owners, how to communicate with the owners, because if you just came to them and said, hey, I want to buy your property, you've probably stopped the conversation. They have a strategy for developing a relationship by trying to learn from the owners, getting to know them, and then finding out if they have a place that's for sale, how it would look if seller financing is option. Cody, I think, is 22 now. He might be coming up on 23, has over 100 units, just closed on a 20 unit complex. And up until recently, all of his deals were seller financing with almost no money down. So there's a lot of strategies for doing that. And howdy, Wayne. But to think about this, that is one path. I know that you are in the military and you will be going to a couple of different bases. So you can actually use your VA loan a couple of times, get different properties. You don't have any of the barriers that some people do with down payments. You can use it several times. You can have more than one VA loan. Hard to find out these things when you're still active duty. But all of my deals are from the MLS. All of them have a traditional mortgage. I never did seller financing. I never did subject to. I never did any of the fancy things. It was entirely possible to reach financial freedom in less than 10 years, the boring, lazy way. Those other ways work too, though. Beth. Howdy, Beth. We want Pirate Dion. It was a great wedding. I did do a Facebook post early on saying, hey, it was before the wedding. I'll do some pictures after if the rum doesn't get me. And apparently the rum got me. Lauren, ciao. Hopefully you have a good evening. Gano, is it okay to let a deal go for $2,000 over offering price? It is okay to let a deal go for $1 billion over offering price, if it makes sense. Offer price is the list price is just the number that made sense to the seller. I've offered over, I've offered under, I've offered at it, as long as the numbers made sense to me. So if a property is put on the market, we tend to do asking price or over asking price for a few days, if it's pursuable. If a market has a property that sits for a while, and find out what is average in your area. So if they sit on the market 20 days and it's at 10 days, you're not going to get really a low offer accepted. The agent has probably educated the seller that, we're probably going to be on 20 days till we get an offer or whatever. If your properties are listed and sold within 2 days and then it's been sitting there for 10, now you can start looking at an under asking offer. The longer it sits on the market, the less likely I would be to do an asking price or above asking price offer. But if you find it, and like I found a deal recently, what was the list price? It's like $300,000. I'd offer $4. I know that this person has the property in that area that makes sense, that would get a yield, the return I'm looking for at $4, maybe even a little bit more. And they listed it low to cause the feeding frenzy. Asking price only matters to the seller, not ever to me as a buyer. Good question, no? And over a 30-year period, do you think you're even going to notice $2,000? Starting to get 20 to 40,000, you start to maybe notice a little bit different in your monthly payments, but yeah, for 2,000, I would definitely, if the numbers made sense, I would easily do that. Matt, Dion podcast would be awesome. I think you'd make a great interviewer. You always let Mike and Lumberjack finish their thoughts before you speak. I struggled with that on the first. If you go back and watch there's a playlist on Zuber's channel. And then the first couple, and then I did an interview with Rylas where we talked about LLCs. And when I get excited, I had a habit of talking over people. So I've really tried to work on that. So thank you for noticing that that's a thing. Yeah. That's it. Once again, great content. Thank you. Thank you. Buddies, please share tips on finding deals in the current market. And so I just covered a few of those on, how to find deals. All of my deals are from the MLS. The best advice I can give for finding deals on the MLS is, and some agents might not like this, but it's not your job to make friends. It's your job to do investing right. Don't sign an exclusivity agreement. An agent who is helping somebody buy a house and takes them to look at 5 or 10 or 15 houses and then starts making offers should sign an exclusivity agreement. They should protect their time. That totally makes sense. We're not home buyers. I want auto searches set up. That's the amount of work the agent's going to do, and take the time to set up. Here's my criteria, set up the search. Here's my footprint. Here's what I want. Here's what I don't want. Get it set up. You're never going to hear from me again until I want to make an offer. I make offers, and then if they're accepted, I'll go look at a property. And very rarely, only one time ever, have I backed out of a deal once an offer is accepted. Then you do that to 3 or 4 agents. You get multiple searches set up with different agents, because searching on the MLS is nuanced. And I've met agents before, and I've talked to them and said, "Oh, this is not true." And I said, "Well, look, let me show you my emails. Here's the search criteria I gave to these 3 agents. Copy and paste the exact same emails, what I'm looking for, where I'm looking for, and what I don't want." In 10 years, one time in a 24-hour period, have any of my agents ever sent me the same deal? And it was within a day. So it wasn't even like it came the same day. How they look, the words they put in, something they do when they click on the MLS to set up those searches, each brokerage does it differently. It's going to come in a different format. Then this is a finite universe. Protect your reputation. You're only going to deal with the same number of people for the next several decades. You're going to have a reputation that's going to last years. Whoever sends you the deal first gets the work, and be transparent. Literally, if somebody sends you a deal and you say, "Yeah, I'm already on a contract with that," send them a screenshot of the email saying, "This is how 3 days ago that person sent me this deal that you just got to me." If the agent understands they're not doing a bunch of work, so you're not taking a bunch of their time, but they have the chance at getting a commission if they send you a deal first, works out great. So that's my advice. Then there's a ton of ways of doing mailers and looking at tax returns. And this is not something I would do, but I went into the marriage license certificate place not too long ago, because I do weddings as a pirate. If you live in Washington, I do them for free. You just have to be okay with a pirate being there. But went in to record a license. I don't know why I was doing it on this one, because normally the couple does that. But it was full of people filing for divorce who are a target-rich environment for needing to offload properties sometimes. Like, there's a lot of creative ways to find property. I haven't done any of them. From the MLS, traditional lending, but multiple agents with multiple searches. And each agent, like I've got, as I saved up a down payment that got larger and larger and larger, I thought, oh, I'm going to set up a BRRRR search because it's an advanced strategy. I wouldn't have started this in the first 10 years, but I've been doing this 10 years, have the money, I can handle my mistakes. So I'm going to do that. I haven't done one yet, but I have a search going for that. And then I have a search for houses with ADUs, and then small multifamily with several different agents. Christine, was your network just as good when you started the first couple of, no, I don't even need to see the rest of that question. It was not. First couple of years, I have realtors, lenders, and seek out a few handyman from time to time, but wondering if I should be doing more. That is killer. If you have more than one handyman, handywoman, whatever, ready, available, that's the best. If you're talking to several agents and several lenders, you're doing great. My first 2 deals, I had one lender didn't shop rates, and then the lender educated me on how to shop rates. She used these words, so hopefully this helps you. She said, "I can't go to my boss and say, I really like Dion, I'd like to give him a better rate." She said, "But if you bring me somebody else's offer in writing, I could take that to my boss and say, here's the rate we need to beat to keep this business." And so now I know to talk to at least 3 or 4 lenders and let them all see what each other offers. Same thing with, I learned about the Thumbtack app. So I will find contractors, get quotes, read reviews using the Thumbtack app. So I'm really happy with that. The handyman thing, find local REI meetups and ask the local investors which people do whatever. So some are do flooring, great, but don't have them do plumbing, whatever. So get the in-person face-to-face reviews. If that's your list right there, the only thing I think you were missing, but you're here, so this is helpful, is, are you networked with local investors where you invest? Someone is investing successfully there, and they don't need all of the deals. It's not a competition like you would think. So add to your list there, local investors. But no, it was, when did I start networking? The handyman I did right away. The lender was 5 or 6 years in, really. Yeah, no, I don't think I really started the network probably till 2018 to grow the network. Vince, howdy. We did not create 80% of our currency in the last 2 years. Well, it's $120 billion a month in the trillions, and it's not money. We didn't create the currency like the physical dollars, but we have the digits of that in the last 2 years. So inflation is going to happen, and Google disagrees with you. Again, I'm not a prediction guy, and I'm not really a finance guy. I'm as uneducated as most people I know. Yeah. James J. Question for those in the chat. Anyone else not seeing the join button on iPhone operating system for Dion's page? It's showing for me on Meet Kevin and other pages, but it's mysteriously missing from Dion's channel. It's the weirdest thing that's happening for me too. About half the people I know, the join button shows up and it's not there for others. I'm not sure that's a YouTube problem. Thank you, James J. I appreciate that. Most helpful REI real estate channel that can't read on YouTube and oddly narrates books. And I see. Tom. Howdy. Thank you for that. Make sure I'm not missing a question here from you. Dividend Dave. Howdy. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Down payment for your help on removing some trees on my property. You hear that's your thing. Not so much. Tree trimmers are just like contractors. Get multiple quotes and let each of them see the quotes from the other, so they'll be the ones to point out the flaw in the other person's estimate. Know your local laws on getting estimates in writing, because a lot of times with arborists, they can only go 10% above the fee that they quote you whenever something else is found on the property without renegotiating price. But it's not going to be me. I might come down for a barbecue, but I'm not going to come down to your trees. Making sure I'm not missing any questions here. James J, because you did the super chat. I knew there was a question. Question for those in the chat. Okay, so you saw that. Then you did that thing. Cool, thank you. Surf Marco, we need your book for people that don't have the mindset yet. I am trying to go through Zuber's free course, but it's not connecting for me. He is super smart, but doesn't simplify steps. Cool. Okay, so my goal is always simple, like literally, what are the steps to doing the next thing? And that's definitely going to be set up. Cody Evers, howdy. Thank you for being a member. Monica, howdy. Any recommendations on how to get real estate agents to take your offer to the sellers for seller financing? I have contacted several agents. They all say, no, we don't do that. I am buying in Bakersfield. Okay, so I have a friend who buys in Bakersfield too. She's doing really well. It's like an hour away. Her first rental was. I think she has a couple now. And my brother lives in Fraser Park. So I'll actually be down there in November. I want to be there for a week. I'm going to California. Ugh. So a lot of times you'll run into agents who think seller financing is illegal, which is not true. And then you'll find some agents who think seller financing is a way for them not to get their commission. So I start the conversation with, I would like to make some seller financing offers, and my down payment is going to include both agents' commissions, so that there's no way they're not going to get paid. And some brokerages might just not allow it. Move on. There's a lot of agents. But you might have to start with explaining, I want to make sure you get paid. I've never, this is just advice to everybody watching, never try to negotiate down an agent's rate. If you need to save money on the rate, you're buying the wrong property. I want my agents to make money. I want my handyman to make money. The best thing I do for everybody is give referrals to everyone else. Here's the handyman, his contact, here's how you use him. Here's my contract. Here's a roofing company that I use, Clearview Exteriors in Yelm, Washington. Great price, great team. Like, just try to promote your friends, right? People that have worked for you. Same thing with agents. I want them to make money so that they're motivated to bring me the next deal, so that they answer my calls or emails quickly. Almost sounds like a little bit of education is involved. Start in a conversation with, I would like to do some seller financing deals, making sure that you know my down payment includes the agent fees, because that's what they're afraid of. Is the seller contract is a low down payment to avoid a capital gains hit, and then the person is going to get consistent income. So where does the agent get paid? Because normally what happens is, not normally, but in a conventional sense, you take out a mortgage, the bank goes to title, gives the money to title, the title company goes, okay, so here's the rents and the deposits to the buyer, here's the agent fees, so that money's all coming out of the mortgage that you took. And then the seller gets what's left, so the agents get paid. In a seller finance deal, sometimes they can't logically see where their money's coming from. Derek, if you own a rental and depreciate it over X years and then move in and make it your primary for a couple of years, can you sell without capital gains? That is a great question. If you have lived in a property for the last 2 years, you're not going to have a capital gains hit. So this is a good tax question, and one of those things that is a reason why I have a CPA. I don't want to answer. I mean, I'm going to answer, but let me tell you, this is made up on the spot, that we need to ask a tax pro how this works, like Dividend Dave or somebody who works in the industry. Depreciation recapture might still happen, but it's capital gains on up to 250 or 500,000 if you're married. So it's the IRS 120 run. I'll have to Google it too. So these are good questions for my CPA, so that I can make a video on it and give a more concise answer, because I talked about this a little bit earlier, Derek. If you were here, I think you've been here pretty much the whole time. These are things I kind of didn't want to know as an investor. I need to know for when the question comes up on how this works, because I haven't sold a property yet. It's not my goal. Mine is, it's better than my marriage is until death do us part, the actual goal. I didn't realize both times I was setting a goal with the marriages thing. But if you move in for 2 years and make it your primary, the 121 rule avoids capital gains on up to a certain point. And I think depreciation recapture, going to have to ask a tax pro on exactly how that works, because that would be my way of probably selling a property. If I was going to move in, I would move in, live there for 2 years, and then sell it. Great question. Larry, howdy. From Spokane, Eastern Washington area, 15 miles from Spokane across the state lines in Idaho. Nice. I was actually in Idaho a bunch the last couple of years, putting in a trucking school campus in Twin Falls. CJ, great live as always. Thank you. Howdy. John Williams, howdy. It's not his income, it's his house hack. He gets paid to live. Watch Siberia pit Dion through choices. Yeah, that's true. You can most likely turn your videos into a podcast. There's probably a way to do it. I just need to figure out how to. Zuber, not Siberia. That's a funny autocorrect. Yeah. But it's funny because Siberia is what I call where Matt lives, the lumberjack landlord. But Zuber did a thing with me called Choices. I am currently living in a fourplex. When I moved in, it was cash flowing $1,700 a month positive. And now it's $2,500 a month because it's been a couple of years. And I did the binder strategy this year. Levi, currently 2 units at my house hack have heat, Federal Way. Had a no-call, no-show for HVAC company. Have you encountered any no-heat situations in any of your units? Yes, and so HVAC is kind of like plumbing or septic or sewer or whatever. Have 3 or 4 people that you can call that can respond to track down the issues. Here in Washington, if you have an HVAC system, worst case scenario, you might need to provide a couple of space heaters for tenants while there's something going on. Whereas if you have a septic issue where everything's backed up, you might have to put them in a hotel, depending on however long it takes to fix. So I have a couple of people to call. Who would I use for HVAC around here? I think I got my last HVAC work done through the Thumbtack app. The reason I like the Thumbtack app, one of the reasons that I like the Thumbtack app, like thing used to connect corkboard, Thumbtack, is right. I say this a lot. It sounds scripted because it is. It's a great place to find contractors, get quotes, and read reviews. The reviews are key because when you're done with your project, those contractors know that you are also going to get to leave a review. And if your review says, no showed to my estimate, that's not good. Laura, howdy everyone. Better late than never. 13-hour workday today. Ouch. We were trying to get you to a point where you don't have those. We got about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure I'm not missing. I think I missed a bunch. No, I don't think I missed any. Oh, okay. Dividend Dave, depends on how long it was a rental before principal residence. Usually if it's a residential, it's 250 for single and 500,000 for married, lived in for 2 to 5 years prior to sale. So probably up to a certain amount. And if the depreciation, recapture, and capital gains went above that, you'd have an obligation. But I'd probably need to get somebody on here as a tax pro and probably do a video with a tax professional and actually answer those couple of questions that we had come up tonight. Cool. So I am doing a poll on the YouTube app with the existing channel members on when we want to do what night of the week. A couple of people messaged saying Tuesday wasn't the best night because sometimes these go longer. We have the meetup afterwards. And we've already been in a meeting for a while. So I'm going to do a poll Wednesday through Monday and see which day of the week works best for most people to do that. Subscribe, and what time of day too. It could be the weekend, could be during the day, it could be during the evening, could be whatever works for everybody. And it will be a format where I have Zoom going and you can join the Zoom call to be in it, or you could be on YouTube watching that Zoom call to see how we can interact one-on-one, actually answer questions. Yeah. So unless anything comes in here in a few minutes, I think we're going to be wrapping up for the evening. Make sure I didn't miss any. Levi, appreciate the tip. Trying to build up our network so that will help us use Thumbtack. Our regular HVAC guy is on vacation this week, of course. That's why I like to have a couple. And then Dividend Dave adds, recapture is usually when the property is retired as a rental or sold. There's lots of sticky things with this, and I'm still learning. Yep. Cool. Yeah. So that's a complicated one where when you're doing it, you need to do the research to find out which is the best strategy. Having a topical idea to know that it is a strategy that you can use is important, but really it's kind of like 1031. Like in my mind, I know how 1031 works, but if I was going to do one, I'd spend a week studying to figure out exactly how does this timeline work. All-nighter hider, thank you, appreciate it. Poplar Holdings, howdy. Do you use hard money lender recommendations? I have not used any hard lending. And so I don't know if this is a negative. I can't speak to it because it's not my expertise. All of my deals are from the MLS. No burrs, no flips, no wholesales, no rehabs, rent ready or already occupied using traditional lending, all conventional loans. So if you're going to use hard money, there would have to be a reason. And right now, to me, this doesn't seem like the time to be flipping. Rates and prices are high. You want to be flipping when prices are going up and rates are going down. So that is possible that both of those can happen. And who knows what the next 2 months is going to be like, right? Now, everybody predicts, but nobody knows. And I wouldn't do a burr in this current market. Our friend, Millennial Mike, is doing 2 burr projects that he started 6 months ago when interest rates were 3. Now they're 7. So he's going to have to be creative, but I'm sure he's going to come up with some great videos about it. So I don't have any recommendations on a hard money lender. I would want to make sure that it meets the strategy that you're using and you're planning on prices to either stay the same or go down, right? Plan on the worst and then plan on rates going up. Like, to quote Reacher, plan for the worst, hope for the best. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Something like that. Probably mess it up. Theo, howdy. Do you have a property walkthrough and what you install in your rentals? Paint schemes, type of cabinets, lights, etc. I do not, and I need to. First, I don't know that I've ever replaced cabinets in mine. I've replaced them in others to help friends, but in my own, I've sanded, painted, repaired a couple, replaced the tracks on a few. And so I do have a type of paint that I use. I do have a type of lights that I do have. I did a video with Matt, the lumberjack landlord, on how to replace all of your electric affordably and the right way, and ways to improve pricing. But I have in 10 years, I've had 4 tenant turnovers. So it's not a skill I've had to develop or get really good at. So I will actually kind of say the lumberjack landlord has a product review playlist on his channel where he covers a lot of that, and it just does 1,000. Literally, so I had a friend who bought a duplex and was doing a tenant turn. We called Matt. We said, hey, Matt, what do you do here? What would you do this? So I'm going to recommend, when it comes to what you install in rentals, because he does them right, lumberjack landlord. Mine is, I go off 3 things: safe, clean, functional, because I live in an area where you can have platinum countertops or plywood countertops and you're going to get the same rent. It's not really a big difference here like it is in some markets. And I buy in class C. If you're in class B, B plus, or A, it's going to make a bigger difference. Lumberjack landlord's your guy for that. Okay. And then Cody, thank you. Later the better for you. So I'm going to do that poll. Look for it. If you're a member, it should show up. I'm going to list it for members only. On what day of the week works best for a members only live stream where it's just us and you can join Zoom and have a more interactive that way. I want to thank everybody for coming and hanging out tonight. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.